Okay, good thing that Jack and Alicia are here. Discussion of next Board of Selectmen meeting dates.
We should go at 12 midnight. For Jack.
We have been operating on the fourth Tuesday, 7 o'clock.
And the next fourth Tuesday is a holiday, so
Right.
we have to change it.
But just in general, fourth Tuesdays, Jack, Alicia?
That's fine.
The only thing that Christine is noting is that the fourth Tuesday for December 2011 would put us on the 27th of Christmas week. Perhaps we make an exception, or do we post a special meeting?
It's a discretionary day, town hall is closed
On the 20th?
on the 27th.
That's what I'm saying, maybe we'll do a special meeting on the 20th?
Works for me.
Is that okay? So we'll go third week in December on the 20th, and then all
Actually,
following
seventh.
fourth.
Next meeting will be the 25th.
Don't start trouble.
Oh, that means you would have to be there, so.
Without objection from our new selectmen, do you want to just put that into effect now? 7 o'clock, town hall here.
Yes.
All in favor of approving the presented meeting schedule?
Second.
Aye?
Aye.
Perfect. Okay, so we'll start on the 20th, and then we'll switch to the
To the 4th.
Fantastic.
I'll
Nice
have
that you guys came, so we'll have that.
I'll have a full schedule the 20th so they can approve the full schedule.
Okay. Opportunity for public to comment on agenda items.
On ongoing operations, update of ongoing operations.
Okay?
Did you get through the same yet? I thought I had actually
No?
reordered these, but maybe not. My cola here is manual, therefore it breaks down on this. I would just like to present a quick, as chairperson of the Brodie South Subcommittee, a quick recap of the search for new recreation field space. About 4 or 5 years ago, baseball, football in conjunction with rec soccer, which administers soccer in the fall to about 300 K-8 town kids, informed the Rec Commission there would soon be a need for additional recreation fields. The Rec Commission reviewed 5 or 6 sites during a 2-year period following that request. About 18 months ago, Rec Soccer again approached the Rec Commission, this time with a specific request and some preliminary layouts that they paid for to establish a new playing field in Brodie South. The Rec Commission thought it best to establish a study group to review potential uses of Brodie South and if there were any other possible locations in town for new recreation facilities. The Rec Commission agrees with the rec soccer and other youth sports that I got little notes in here to myself. To clear things up. That there is an immediate need for additional recreation fields or field. We have fields laid out for multiple sports overlapping each other. We have a football field lined on top of a soccer field sitting on top of a baseball field, all being used during the same season. There is now fall baseball, football, and soccer obviously in the fall. We have some town teams playing on fields in Norfolk and Torrington with the gracious acceptance of those towns because there's no space for them in this town. There is no regulation girls softball field available, and there is no space available to establish playing fields for residents over the age of 18 who feel fit enough to continue team sports. The study group is comprised of myself, who is also a rec member and chair of the group, 1 member each representing youth sports, conservation, open space, recreation commission, Friends of Brodie, and the seniors. That representation is currently vacant. The seniors have not replaced their original appointee, for a total of 7 members. During the last year, this group has reviewed between 10 and 15 potential sites, both town-owned and privately owned. And when I say review, I find a location, I go downstairs, I find out who owns it, how big it is, I go walk the land, see if it even remotely meets our needs. We have isolated 4 potential locations. 3 the town owns and 1 is a privately owned, but on the market. Brodie South is 1 location. There are 2 spots in the 70 acres in Antolini, and there's a 10 plus or minus acre location on Old Steel Road. The major stumbling block in this town is finding nearly flat space. We just don't have any large enough to accommodate a reasonably sized field with proper parking estimated by the zoning officials, about 160 cars. We need a minimum of 5 to 6 acres. It's actually the field size, well, I get that in a minute. Northwest Conservation District did an environmental impact study on Brodie South at a cost of $3,400. We had 2 other bidders at that time, and both were in excess of $9,000. We now have a bid, which is page 2, of $1,800 to produce impact studies on all 3 of our potential sites, using the exact same criteria as a Brodie South study. This is important so that we will be able to compare apples to apples when assessing the appropriateness of each area for field development. $1,800, as you know, is below the expenditure amount requiring the bidding process, but if this board feels bids are necessary, I'll pursue them. The town pays an annual stipend of $1,500 to Northwest Conservation District, and I feel we should avail ourselves of their services through this contract. As you will note, the last paragraph indicates that now is the optimum time to do field work to produce this report. The bidding process will add 1 to 2 months to this process and will be in the dead of winter. There's been a great deal of public concern with respect to the many rumors about what is going on in regards to Brodie South, as witnessed by the involvement of Planning and Zoning Commission last night. There was a meeting, spent an hour discussing Brodie South, and that's the 4th commission in town to get actively, or been requested to be actively involved in this. After providing a similar overview for the commission at last night's meeting, they were encouraged by the fact that the study group feels it may be able to wrap up and present their review with recommendations in the next 3 or 4 months. There will be at least 1 more request for funds that I will bring to this board. We are currently seeking bids from 3 engineering firms to provide a report of anticipated development costs for each site to construct a flat playing surface 140 yards and 100 yards, 140 yards long and 100 yards wide. That's approximately 2.8 acres for the playing field alone without additional parking, and that's why we need about 5-acre parcel, which is hard to come by. This report, together with the aforementioned environmental study, should allow the study group to produce a recommendation with reasons to the Rec Commission and the town when it's completed. So tonight I'm basically here to hopefully this board will approve the contract and $1,800 expenditure for the 3 sites that the Brodie South Committee has seen worth spending money on to look at. The 2 at Antolini, one is the expansion of the existing playground area to accommodate play equipment and a field this size. In additional parking, they have parking up there, but clearly if there's going to be more use on weekend, we need more parking. In the second area on the 70-acre site, in the upper right-hand corner as you face the site, there is a substantial flat area. It may be, it's remote at this point in time, we may need to get a right-of-way from an abutter to get into it, but it's certainly flat enough, and the town does, or it appears to be from the topos we reviewed, and the town does own it. So that's why we're interested in looking at that site also. And then the Old Steel Road site, I can't remember, I should. The 2 brothers that own it, it's next to Donna's.
Vinnie Fowler.
Yeah, it's 10 acres. Most of it is nearly flat. I'm an accountant. I did a rough layout. I'm sure a landscape professional could do better. When I did the layout, I got 180 cars, a full-size football field with sidelines, a full-size soccer field with sidelines, and there was still about 2.5 to 3 acres of the site remaining.
Separate football and
separate
soccer.
football side. Now, all we're gonna get bids on is an overlapping field, because that's all that seems to be reasonable for Brodie South and the two Antolini sites. None of those three sites, given the input from residents, would seem to accommodate more than the dimensions of this field, which a football field would be 140 yards long, only 70 yards wide, the two sidelines. But a soccer field is 80 yards wide with two 10-yard sidelines. So that's why we get the 100-yard width, is to accommodate soccer. The 140-yard length is to accommodate football. And so the initial blush is one flattened surface to accommodate layover fields. Now, certainly if this other piece is viable and it's recommended by the group to take a closer look at, it appears as though it would accommodate separate fields and parking. But that's why we need the cost analysis from an engineer, because we don't own that parcel. So certainly, in addition to development costs, there would be acquisition costs. And after lengthy discussion with Paul Follett, it appears as though the price may be negotiable enough so that the town would be interested. So anyway, this evening, hopefully the
Have
commission
you heard if there's any objection to
will
that site?
consider the 1800, what's that?
Have you heard whether or not there's any local opposition to that site at Old Mill Road?
Sir, pretty much any site in this town, as you well know, we're gonna have, not in my backyard, feedback. The feedback I've gotten is 3 of the 5 people that have had input on it are uncomfortable with it, and 2 are very comfortable with it. But wherever we go in town, and I'm sure the school board will have some concerns about all these out-of-towners playing in Fields Place right behind the school, and there may be, I just, every turn, every property I've looked at, and as I say, there's been 30 or more in the 5 years we've been investigating this, there's pushback from neighbors as soon as they hear you're looking to put a playing field behind their home or business property.
So
The 2 ideal spots.
So is this a competition field or a practice field?
It would be, probably it'll ultimately
Is
be.
the goal here just to have a practice area?
No, the goal is to set up additional field space. As I said, we have no girls softball field. We have no area available for adult team sports. A brief overlook, and certainly other people need input on it, would probably be a flat surface like this, probably no structures, just a nice big grass area, for the team sports, football and soccer, probably lacrosse as it comes down the line. I think we're going to have lacrosse in 5 to 7 years. I'd be very, very surprised if it takes 7 years. Would utilize this as playing surface and perhaps some practice time. You don't want to wear the fields out with constant practice. So that's one of the reasons there's very little practice at Brown's Corner. And then Brown's Corner would slowly become a baseball facility, probably. Establish the girls softball area down there. Where there are not fields, soccer and football use, I think that home base placed between right field and the soccer snack shack, so that the river and the soccer storage shed became center field.
Oh, stop and go back and do that again.
Right.
I know the lay of the land
Right.
pretty good, but you
Right.
just threw me.
Right field in the Little League, the soccer snack shack, and that area at the base of the hill would be home base, so that the river and the soccer storage shed would be center field. I think that would be a great softball, adult softball, that area would be large enough to accommodate adult softball and other
And maintain
uses.
that field, what is field 3? And maintain that smaller,
Right, and then you could maintain the large soccer field to the left, and to the right-hand side where football and soccer overlay
Well, you just
the
said
American-
something that's contrary. Are you trying to maintain a soccer field there, or are you eventually getting soccer out of there?
Eventually, I would imagine getting soccer out of there, but it would be a large, flat, grassy area that would be large enough for a soccer field, should that expand, or a lacrosse field, or field hockey, although field hockey doesn't seem to be played at the younger kids' age. It seems to really be instituted at high school, but we do have it in junior high and high school, so there may or may not be a push for that. But I think that given that scenario, there would be two large grassy areas to the right and the left of perhaps an adult softball diamond, and we would get a legitimate girls. I mean, Title 19 was 40 years ago, and our girls are playing on Little League baselines and Little League pitching mounds, and
Yeah, we discussed this at one of your meetings.
So,
There's
yes.
definitely no space for our girls.
right.
The funding's in their budget.
The funding is not determined yet. We haven't finished our project yet. I don't have the exact number. I have concerns about pricing, and I have a little bit of concerns about Northwest Conservation District. And I'm not sure that I'm ready to move on this tonight. I am in favor of pursuing, and I think that if I were to have to give you my gut reaction right now, I think my sense is that the safer outcome would be Antolini. I think it's a school, so you'd have the school would benefit and the community would benefit.
You got parking.
You got parking and you got a big site. That site at the end of Old Steel, I think, is a challenge. I think there's pushback there. I think it has no expansion potential. It's got all steep hill all around it.
I don't think topsoil there, is it?
And I know that the locals use the abutting parcel for target practice, which could be challenging for a youth sports complex. And it's not really complex. You could get a single field there. No expansion. If we're going to go somewhere,
Dan,
I'm concerned.
Dan, there's 10 acres, and I have to disagree with you on that, because I'm not an expert, but clearly I laid out 180 parking spots, legal-sized parking spots, and two full-size soccer and a full-size football field, not overlapping, and there was still 3 acres remaining. It's a 10-acre site. And granted, the back part of the site is steep, but all of the other sites are a single field. And that's why I think it's important in the long run to fund an engineering cost study, because there's a very real possibility it'll cost $400,000 to improve Antolini and $450,000 to improve and buy the 10-acre site. So it's important to complete the studies, to complete the environmental, because maybe the environmental is going to tell us we can't do it for one reason or another, and complete a cost analysis to see, in fact, ultimately, which sites are going to generate how much space for how much money.
Well, I just told you, if I had to give my gut instinct on it tonight, that would be it. You know, developing it at the end of there's no cul-de-sac there. And then you have a house up behind it, the right-of-way with the Arbucci house up on the top of the hill there. Just my gut instinct is that would be more of a challenge, more difficult, and I don't know that it has, in my opinion.
Well, it's pretty
The
clear
expansion.
that our fields are probably maxed out.
Well, we've been discussing this, and Dan has been advocating for more. And we're in agreement that we need to plan for the future.
Yeah.
One study was $3,400?
For the Brodie South, which was 150 acres,
3,400, yeah.
Yeah.
And 3 would be 1,800?
from the same organization.
Why the difference, only because they've already done one?
Well, no, in part, it's the size. Brodie South was 150 acres. Old Steel Road is 10 acres. The other two sites are probably 3 or 4 acres, 5 acres each. In addition to which, we pay a $1,500 a year stipend into Northwest Conservation. And according to them, we haven't used them yet this year, so they're discounting the price to offset the fact, to some degree. They didn't tell me how much the discount was. I don't know if it's $10 or $500, but they said the price is less than it would be because we have not utilized any services from them, and yet we did pay in the $1,500 town fee to help support them.
Our funding for this comes out of the Brodie roof job. So I think we gotta wait and see where we stand on there. You're not talking about building a new building there. This is an old barn that we're doing here. Gotta see where we stand at the end of the job. I think that we get a little bit into it, we see where we are, see what the excess funds are on it. I know that we have engineering costs too that I haven't documented yet. Yeah, Jeff?
Yeah, just, a question about this, because I've only been to a couple of meetings in town in the last several months, but they all seem to involve the football fields or the potential football fields. So, my question is really twofold. One is, the Brodie South Committee makes a recommendation to the Board of Selectmen as to where the proposed, with funding and purchasing and environmental studies complete. Then the Board of Selectmen is the one who ultimately decides?
No, I would personally, I would think that the recommendation should be coming through almost in the budget process from the rec commission.
Right.
The rec commission.
Well, that's exactly my question, Bruce. So my question is we have a committee that was appointed by the Board of Selectmen.
No,
No?
rec commission. The rec
Appointed by the
commission.
rec commission,
The
okay.
rec commission itself.
So if Brodie South recommends to the rec commission, we have this field here, then the rec commission, through the budgeting process, would bring it to the Board of Selectmen.
Yeah, and you guys get to wrestle with it.
Last-
I don't mean.
No, I'm just curious. I don't know if it's a fair
Last
question
year-
to ask or not, but I'm curious, because people are, I'd like to know that.
So last year, to further this effort, this group put in, we've already been through this. We have a mechanism, it's just the funding is undetermined. Any excess funds generated from the re-roof job on the field house can be used for rec field studies. It's right in the budget, it's already approved. The question is, how much money will be done at the end of the project? The project is not done yet.
Dan, you're leading,
So-
that's part two of my question. Why does the rec commission have to come to the Board of Selectmen every time they want to?
Yes, the
They
purchasing
do.
authority, the
Okay.
rec commission's $500.
Okay, so
Maximum for the rec.
if the rec commission
I
is
believe
gonna
that's-
spend more than $500, then they wouldn't have to come before the
Then
Board of Selectmen,
First selectman has to sign off,
if it's more than 500.
yes.
So we could almost get it done at Steel Road if it was $50 less. So, my last piece is,
Well, like
I just wanna go on, I think that, I wonder if we wanna have an environmental study on property that we don't have, an option to purchase at Old Steel Road. Or because, it sounds like, you're in negotiations with them, and there's a lot of interest in putting the field there, and some people think it's feasible, others don't. But the reality is, we don't have any contract to purchase the land.
What needs to happen here is you have to actually develop a template as to how you would acquire legally the property.
No, I was just gonna suggest that Dan might wanna modify his request to maybe allocate, a substantially less amount than $1,800 and just establish the $1,250 to do the field studies at the town-owned property, if that
Yeah, but
is
then-
amenable to anybody.
But I think if that privately owned property is something that we want to consider, we need to do the two town-owned properties, do a study on those, but if that's a feasible option, then we really should take a look at that. I mean, you're not gonna buy the land before you do the study.
So what you're saying is maybe we should
I mean,
just,
for $600.
550, yeah.
I mean, it's a dead flat piece of property too.
I understand the position of the selectmen, but I would advocate that, we need, it seems like there's a need to move forward. I'm not a user of the field, so I can't really say that definitively. At this point, my family is not using the fields because they're older and they live at college, so. But if there is this, this need to improve the fields, and there has been so much due diligence on behalf of the Recreation Commission and the Brodie South Commission, which has been demonstrated here tonight by the chairman of the Brodie South Commission. I don't know about the construction over there that much about the construction, but I've seen the field house building. And if we have $1,800 is not a lot of money. That's my point. And if it's going to propel forward the opportunity to have a football field, then that's what we want. So I don't see. I mean, if it was 1.8 million or 800,000 or something along those lines, but $1,800 in the scheme of things, you know, I don't know whether we should be looking at all 3 sites at this time or at least the 2 Antolini sites.
Jack, do you ever have a addition or a renovation go in your house? You ever get that call from the contractor that says we got a problem? Well, right now our roofing project's about 40,000. Our engineering's about 5,000. We have $5,000 window.
Where are you putting those new trusses on? On
the
shed?
wing walls.
Up on the wing walls.
So one phone call and our funding mechanism is.
So wait a minute though. I mean, I'm okay with that, but I mean,
So
you know,
if
you
you
don't
have the money
put
or
both
you
feet
don't.
in the pool without planning on getting your feet wet. I mean, we don't have an extra $1,800 if.
We don't know what we have. We haven't finished the project yet.
So what you're saying is the $50,000 that we've allocated.
The primary job is to do the
roof. That's
first,
right. And then afterwards.
See what we have left.
How far are they coming? How far are
Dan,
they
does
along
that
with
work into your plans though?
They are stripping the roof as
Well,
we speak.
wait till the field house is done, see what's left, and then go ahead with the studies.
Well, if that's what need be, that's what needs to be.
That's how we
The-
explained it to the public when we
the-
went through the budget
Okay.
process.
The idea.
Getting the roof done and any remaining funds. So this is what we talked to Dan about at
Well,
last meeting.
not quite, Dan, it's very close, but what was said was the roof and Brodie South at 140,000, there should be more than enough money to fund $15,000 worth of studies. And John Massey and I were both in that conversation with you, so don't shake your head no, because John has the same recollection of that conversation as I do.
Dan,
At any rate,
Dan,
we can
Let me-
do
let me
this
tell you
study
something right now.
whenever, to
Dan.
answer Tom's question, we can do this study whenever the finances are available to do it. But as the letter indicates, no frost in the ground, no leaves on the trees is the optimum time.
Well, that's what I was asking, so I agree, I'd like to.
And the other input was at last night's P and Z meeting, there was a lot of pressure within the P and Z group to take over this project themselves and throw it. There were 2 or 3 P and Z members that were making comments based on the pressure from the public that they should look into Brodie South and see what is appropriate and so on and so forth. And when I indicated that we might be able to wrap this up in 3 or 4 months, the attitude changed to, okay, we're very near the end of this road, let's wait and see what the study group projects. So if we wait until January to fund this, the reports probably won't come back till February or March, and we'll be out in June or July before we have a recommendation. Because certainly if an environmental study at $600 on one of the Antolini process pieces says this piece is not worth developing, then we're not going to spend the money to do an engineering report on it. So the environmentals are inexpensive. They may say go forward with engineering on all 3, or they may eliminate 1 or 2 of the sites right off the bat because it's wetlands, because it's too inaccessible, you know. I don't know what they're going to come back at. That's why we're getting them. So, I'm sorry to interrupt, Dan, but go ahead.
I would disagree with your interpretation. I stood without your presence at least 7 or 8 public meetings and described the process.
Okay.
You were not in the room.
That is true.
You
I
and
am
John
relaying.
came to my office and begged for any amount of money.
Correct.
And I told you that the town will proceed with how we proceeded through the budget process. You are incorrect,
Okay.
and you are misrepresenting my opinion.
Okay.
The town will proceed with the roofing project as I described to the public through countless meetings. And when the budget for that is done and documented, then we will proceed. Okay?
I have my perception of our conversations, and you have your perception of our conversations.
You wanted a lot of things when you came. You wanted money from Brown's Corner for undiscretionary capital funds for rec, because you guys did not prepare and have any homework done to outline your capital budget. And I've already warned John and Dennis that you guys really need to come to the table with more homework. Okay? The capital subcommittee, as documented through the Board of Finance, there are $5,000 requirement and 5-year lifespan. Let me finish, please. You need to do your homework, because the days of easy money and budget process with no grand list growth and a difficult economy, these days are over. This board has done its best to keep taxes down and to really give people in the public the information they need to make an informed decision on every project that we go for. And people have been very generous with their money. But the idea that rec is going to be immune from the capital project is incorrect, okay? I went to every meeting and advocated for you guys for $25,000 for a septic system on a back-of-the-napkin request that I told you was inaccurate, because Department of Public Health or DEP was going to have to administer that thing, and you guys all told me I was crazy. And I said, you know, Dan, here's the letter from the engineer, and you guys didn't believe me. I had Maureen Morris at a meeting telling me, didn't understand it, it was crazy. Well, you know, now we're at the point where we know, Farmington Valley Health, and I've been vindicated again, trying to explain to you guys, you need to do more homework. The way that our projects work around here, and the way our budgets stay tight, is that we dot the I's and cross the T's. The budget for the roof is going to be done, and the roof is going to be on, and that's when we'll get money, and we'll find out exactly what's left, and we can move forward. But when you start talking about dealing with properties that are not owned by the town, and you're talking about acquisitions, you're talking about zoning approval, condition of sale, and then you haven't even talked to the Board of Finance. You don't even know if there's support at the Board of Finance for them to even allocate money for an acquisition. So that, we've had this conversation when people came in with the concern about the trees, and I said, you know, developing sports fields like Brown's Corner takes years, okay? To think that it's going to be done in a couple months really misleads our public, and you do a disservice to the community when you try to rush it. Okay? You don't have any idea what the Board of Finance of this town is ready and willing and able to support. And you don't know what the P&Z is willing to approve. Any contract would have to be subject to a P&Z approval, which wouldn't buy a piece of land at the end of a cul-de-sac, which, from what I heard at a lot of your meetings, developing sports fields on rural roads was really not the desired outcome. You know, these kind of go contrary to what you wanted to develop. I thought we wanted to be on a state highway, and now you're talking about putting them at the end of a cul-de-sac. These are challenges, and I know that there's opposition in that neighborhood. So, like I said, one, our budget's got to be right, it's got to be documented. And two, you got an uphill climb if you think that there's going to be an easy outpouring of cash for an acquisition. I think some of what you're saying here, for the record, from what I hear, is not really representational, because from what I understand, the P&Z lawyer last night basically told the crowd that there is no zoning issue at Brodie South, and therefore, you know, the use of the park for, you know, activities that are going on right now is really not an issue. There are no substantial zoning violations. Is that what the lawyer informed the commission last night?
The current use of the park, that is what he told the commission.
That's right. So right now, we do have a home that is adequate to meet the needs now while we look.
That's not true, Dan.
It's not?
And you're well aware of it. Number one, in this little lecture that I just received, you told me we need to support our requests. This is a request so that I can support my request. I'm asking for $1,800 to do a study to support a request. You're telling me I can't have the $1,800, but I should find a way to make the request for the land. That doesn't make sense, Dan. You're creating a catch-22 situation that the Rec Commission cannot get out of. We have no funds to do studies with, yet you want an application for capital money based on studies done. So how do I do studies without funding to do the study, to provide you with your information?
You wait
now,
to complete the roof.
With
and then you
request.
get some funds.
The remaining funds from the roof
I understand
is
that.
going to be used for this.
I understand that, Tom.
And I agree with you. I think the study's going to be done.
Now, with respect to, yes, Brodie South can be used as it's currently being used, but it is marginally a practice field. It is not safe enough to put out-of-town teams and our teams on it with the potential ruts that are in a field in that condition. It is nowhere near flat. It is very pitched in 2 or 3 different directions. According to the lawyer last night, any change in grade is a substantial change and requires P&Z approval. So Brodie South, in its current condition, is not acceptable as additional playing space. And we are not asking for more practice fields. What we need are more fields that are safe and adequate for team sports to play on. All right, so you're absolutely right that it is fine for what it is being used for, but we're not looking, the Rec Commission and the Brodie South, representing various sports in town, is not looking for more playing fields. We're looking for areas. Now, as I said earlier, and I really don't mean to beat this to death, because you guys got better things to do, if you can find a facility that perhaps we need to acquire, and you're right, absolutely, I'm well aware of, but I wasn't going to take this time to lay out all of the steps to accomplish the end goal, but to even analyze the potential of X number of dollars for acquisition, X number of dollars for improvement, you get a total figure. X number of dollars for improvements, you get a total. If you can acquire a four-wheel drive pickup truck that can only move snow in an 8-foot band and it'll cost you $1,000 less than acquiring a Ford F-50 which can move snow on 44, which vehicle are you going to buy? The pickup that can plow parking lots, or the F-550 that can plow main roads? If there's $1,000 difference, and the F-50 costs $1,000 more. We don't know that without these studies. I can't make legitimate presentations.
I'm not arguing about whether or not.
I'm just replying to
whether or
Dan.
not we need to do the study. I agree with you. I think before, you have to come up with recommendations on
Right.
what the different options are, what are the best alternatives, and as part of that, when you do the study on the parcel that we don't own, one of the reasons you don't want it is because it's not owned and we have to acquire it.
Right.
But I agree with you. You gotta do the studies first. And that's gonna come out of the remaining money.
You gotta wait till the project's done.
Right.
Right.
But I'm not quibbling with this. I agree with you.
What
The studies have to be done.
What happens if we don't have $1,800 left when the roof's done?
You gotta put in for budget next time.
So then we're out another budget season, which is another
Here.
12 months? What are we in a fiscal year?
7
or are we-
months.
7 months? What's that?
7 months.
7 months, okay. Thank you. Okay, so it could be June, or it could be in 2013.
2012, July 1.
Yeah, but then by the time, so you're saying you could see, if we don't have the money when the roof is done, the
Are you
1,800.
ready to go on a budget right
Yeah,
now?
go ahead, bud. My questions are answered, thank you.
Mine too, thank you.
Sounds good. So that's what we'll do, and we'll look to see how the roofing project comes forward, and maybe this will resolve itself.
Of course, you could always put in a request
No, I think, I think one thing that, I get the feeling that Bruce and Dan and Tom and everybody else in the room is, there's a need for this. I think that, everybody has said, it's not gonna be, it's an uphill battle. We need a location, we need funding, we need engineering, we need public support, and we need the money. So, it's gonna take a little while, and I think that, Dan and his group, have shown a lot of due diligence, and I think that, hopefully we're gonna be able to support them in the near future with $1,800 $1 bills.
Okay, let's move on, correspondence a little bit.
Could I have public, wait.
Sure. Linda?
Thank you. I attended the special meeting on the Commission on Aging last Wednesday. And my agenda is multi. I'm going to tell 3 quick stories. There was a man who lost his phone power and had to do a pacemaker check with the hospital every day. And he went 9 days without being able to check his pacemaker. There were an elderly couple who were completely snowed in and cut off for 8 or 9 days. Where do people go? What procedure is in town that looks out for the elderly who can't advocate for themselves in a situation such as the storm.
What you're asking for, it starts with appropriate CLMP registration. When CLMP diagnoses, if you are in their system and pre-registered as a special needs individual, the reactivation or repair of your services is prioritized if you're senior or special needs. Part of the process of helping people is to educate them of the things that they can do for themselves to see that they do take advantage of that priority designation. And part of that is getting, our people with needs to go back to CLMP now that the storm has settled down and say, listen, I need to get registered, I have an issue. There are some things that quantify and there are some things that don't. Christine and I found this out, and I think that the example that we were given is that simply being a diabetic, I believe it was, does not necessarily quantify you, but if you have respiratory issues,
No, oxygen does not automatically.
Having oxygen doesn't automatically.
You should have a generator.
Well, not only that, they usually, Lincare or whatever, they usually give you your emergency tanks. They don't last forever, but this was an extenuating situation. So, also, what happened to the Freedom Ride bus that used to transport patients? Does anybody know?
I believe they just went out of business.
I have a client who needs Coumadin. She has very limited funds. Right now, she calls a volunteer ambulance to take her to the emergency room, and that's how she's renewing her Coumadin. The cheapest transportation I could find for her is out of Granby. The Advanced Wheels folks rent a van for $150 for 24 hours, but they do not sell rental insurance, so it has to get picked up by somebody. So Medicare does not pay if you're for a wheelchair transport. You have to be horizontal to get transportation paid. So I think there's a real need for some kind of reinitiation of that program. The other thing that I don't know what to do with is, it's no secret what I do in my home. And fortunately or unfortunately, my patient died between the two storms. Otherwise, I would have had to take her out of our home because it was just, she was totally bedridden and there was no way to really work with her in the house. So she died on hospice in the house. But there is, I don't know how many people here know about Money Follows the Person or the Veterans Administration trying to get host families for veterans in medical homes. Connecticut's not totally on board with that program yet. The Department of Social Services about 10 years ago had a program called Adult Family Living, and that's the regulation that I'm trying to operate under. They closed the program, and I think that it needs to be reopened. What they were doing was paying host families $37 a day. Well, I couldn't afford to take care of somebody 24/7 for $37 a day. I don't think I could even heat my house. So and my recommendation is that program, the law is already written. It's already on the books. It's been legislated. It's been regulated. It just needs to be reopened. And this would provide instant housing with a PCA, with a caregiver in the house. It would enable the person, the recipient of the services, to be able to get home care. And anyway, how elder-friendly is New Hartford? When I chaired the Housing Authority several years ago, it was all the Pine Meadow and affordable housing, and land use was the big hot thing. So it was decided at that point that we disband the Housing Authority because we weren't going to buy housing and maintain it. The town had the property in the 50s. The charter was all in place, etc. So this adult family living would give unemployed, single moms, retired people income under Money Follows the Person. They could register with the Department of Consumer Protection so that people would know they were around. So I don't know if this is something that anybody wants to think about, but
what can this board do?
I don't know. What, if anything, I think the Commission on Aging folks report to you, I guess. I don't know. It's-
Occasionally,
Yeah, right. Well,
I tend
it
to
was-
go report to them.
Well, actually, I put my hat in the ring, and I guess they wanted Fran instead of me, which is one of the reasons I came, but that's perfectly fine. They don't know who I am, and that's, that's where it's at. So, but there's some real issues, all due respect to the ball field, but, I'm up to my elbows in taking care of people. So, I guess I'm looking for the town to be more elderly friendly and to really, I know that economic development and all of that is very important, and the American Planning Association is creating these retirement environments, but the services are not coming. And so I think there has to be more in that direction. One final thing, my daughter almost died and had to be life-starred out of Colebrook, and they couldn't find her. The EMTs and the ambulance couldn't find her because it was a newly developed road and dirt road, and they couldn't find her. But fortunately, they finally got to her, so as a result of her case, the town went around and put fire markers. It was mapped out in the town now where every residence is for emergency purposes. So I'm thinking something along those lines for the elderly. I mean, there's going to be people who are not going to comprehend what they're supposed to do, and I don't know what the outreach would be, or how much information is in the census that could identify the people that we might communicate with.
There's not a lot in the census, Linda.
No addresses? No, well, I don't have to tell you
That's
what
all
I
private,
know.
that's all private.
Yeah, so
Just to interject, this is something that Dan and I were talking about earlier about letting people know that, we talked about seniors and trying to encourage our seniors if they have situations that they need to be checked on during storms, they need to call us, they need to let us know. Dan
During
knocked
the
on
storm.
several doors during the storm. He was on a lot of knocking on doors.
That's
Yeah.
all our constables did for
Yeah.
4 days.
well, I guess,
Well,
I
what
guess
they
you
call-
missed a couple people.
Yeah.
What
That's
they
just
call
me.
wellness checks, it's very difficult for them to do, because a lot of times there's not much aid that they can bring. They're not doctors, pharmacists, they can't provide transportation and do things like that on their own. So they do have people calling from other towns, relatives,
Can you check
they
on
call, can you check on my family? We haven't heard from them, and of course, the first thing is they have to describe and take 15 minutes to describe the situation of, we've just gone through a traumatic storm that's knocked out power. Just because you can't reach them, you can't reach anybody, and it's very
No,
difficult.
I understand, and I think everybody's done a super job in a very extraordinary situation.
Mhm.
But, we're all talking about what we learned from what opportunities, if any, and yeah, life's a risk, and, you're old, and if you didn't make provision for yourself, but, you could rationalize it any which way, but it just seems that, with all of the technology we talked about, with the world that we live in, you have to ask yourself, why would some things fall through the crack? And you say, well, maybe neighborhood, who lives in your neighborhood, or, this is
Clergy,
something.
I know Immaculate Conception Church, has put together a call and checklist after the storm, just like.
And that's what we wanna work on too,
Like
exactly.
Christine had
Yep.
recommended. So it's just about, it's about the community or the senior center in New Hartford putting together the call and checklist and other organizations, because, I don't think anybody thought that, at 8 AM Saturday morning that they weren't gonna have power for 9
Yeah.
days, or
Yeah,
they weren't gonna be able to,
yeah.
So it was a very, trying situation for the elderly, and, we learned, like Christine said, that, just because you're on oxygen doesn't mean you have to have power.
Well, that's right.
Apparently,
I
it's not a reason to be
Consider it-
identified, yeah. But more and more people, are on this stuff, than in the past.
Part of what Christine and I are working on is a townwide letter, because ultimately, all the technology in the world didn't help anybody for the first few days.
Yeah.
But there is a certain element of the Boy Scout motto, be prepared, that living in a small community like New Hartford, especially if you live in a rural area of Stubb Hollow, Richards Road, Satan's Kingdom Road, some of these properties that are remote access, some
Hard
of
to
which
get to
have.
when there's not a storm.
Yeah, and you know, if you don't have a wood stove, some backup food, some stored water, you know, at least for a couple days, you know, till somebody can get into you, because when the system fails for everybody, you know, you have to start making some broad decisions about how you recover and how you benefit the most people. At the same time, you're trying to reach those in need, but you know, you're getting it from all angles. It's really coming at you from any side. And, you know, part of our outreach, you know, beyond documenting what we think recommendations for CLNP, you know, are, is really trying to re-educate people. Because, you know, you talk to a lot of the old school farmers in town, and they sit there and say, well, you know, this used to happen a lot 40 years ago.
Right.
And that's why we still have the wood stove and a stack of wood out and back, so we can keep the house. But a lot of modern era people don't heat with wood. They don't have that alternative source of heat, you know, and you know, it puts you in a tough spot, you know, and it's, you know, we got to do what we can to re-educate people of having a little bit of a backup plan, you know, make sure they have a little extra food, you know, several days of food in there, a little
You
bit
save
of
a lot,
water.
you know, the education effort, you know,
Yeah.
5 years from now or 10 years from now.
But also know your surroundings too. Know the people that surround you, those that might be in need in your neighborhood. You know, I live in a neighborhood of 6 or 8 houses, and everybody knows each other, and everybody touches in on everybody. And you know, we don't really have an elderly population right in our specific neighborhood, but everybody keeps an eye on everybody. You know, everybody knows who the kids are, and when a unusual car comes in the neighborhood, everybody kind of takes a long look and says, well, where's that going, you know? But, you know, people need to be aware of their surroundings and be prepared for unusual events like this, because it seems like it's happening to us more than once now these days, isn't it? With Irene hitting us and now this storm. So,
Linda,
you know.
have you had any contact with Connecticut Community Cares?
CCCI?
Yeah.
Not lately. I've contacted a lot of people, but unless there's someone behind me and there's, you know, I'm just, you know, one little person out there, you know, everybody's got their big agendas. But, you know, I'll just keep trying, because I think if they privatize adult family care, it's very doable, and I couldn't do what I do without the VNA and blah, 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 but it definitely solves a very short, if not short-term or long-term housing issue, particularly if money follows the person.
Well, the CCCI, they do try to provide enough services so that people can stay in their homes. Like my father is on that.
Well, this particular woman makes $2 too much to qualify. Yeah. She has $2, she has just a little over $3,000, which knocks her out of the program. So she'll just keep taking the ambulance once a month over to the ER and getting her treatment, and Medicare will pay.
Yes.
So anyway, thank you for any consideration regarding any of it.
Yeah. What I would recommend is that the Commission on Aging has been turning over, so don't give up faith. There'll probably be another.
Oh, there will be, and they're working.
One
Well,
soon.
how does, well, I think
They
one
want
of
to
the
work on their
discussions,
charge too.
yeah,
Yeah.
we pulled
But,
the ordinance.
Yeah.
How does the alternate work? So Fran's gonna get the permanent position, but there's also the alternate position open. How does that get resolved?
When somebody, well, if there's a vacancy, then I would recommend going to a couple of their meetings and getting to know the folks, and you know, next thing you know, they'll bring forward a recommendation for you for the
Right.
alternate, and then when someone misses a meeting, you're on
That
sitting
works.
in and.
They had a couple people
Yeah.
in line waiting for
Yeah.
openings. so,
Yeah, no, that's fine.
Mhm.
So thank you for the opportunity to voice my concerns.
Fantastic. Bob,
I'm all set.
Alicia,
What's up?
Jack, more, Maria?
Thank you.
Fantastic. Correspondence, we have, I did pass around Linda Martin's letter. We did have a couple other cards from positive notes on the storm, and another from Joe Halnan, the commander of the VFW, who does the Veterans Ceremony down at Chapin Park every year. Did a nice job this year. It was really well attended this year. Last year we didn't see as many people, but they bought out the scouts and everybody participated. A couple nice things. We also got letters, letter to me from Allison Murdoch, my neighbor. expressing concern about Brodie Park South. Again, I know they've been working on this for a while, and another letter that went to the Planning and Zoning Commission that you guys have been copied on, which I'll make a copy of this. Allison's comments to the Planning and Zoning, I'll let you read for yourself, but I think some of them, you know, allege zoning violations and things like that. And I think that that was put to rest last night by the P&Z. Allison also documents her opinion about the conservation efforts of Brodie Park South and the impact that the increased use has had over the last couple of years. I know Allison quite well. I've been her neighbor for 12 years. You know, I need to give Allison a call and talk more about this. I think that everybody has a little bit of a sensitivity to Brodie Park South. I think we've been talking about it for close to a year now. And as we said when those folks came in to talk about the trees, I don't know if you were here at that meeting or not, you missed that one, but you were here. I think everybody looks for the magic solution to a problem, and I think they need to take a step back and understand that the development of Brown's Corner took 40 years to get it where it is today. There is no magic answer to creating and improving field space. It takes time. I think that we all acknowledge that we have a situation where we have a juggernaut in football, and I think that when people came before us and they wanted to talk about trees for about 5 minutes, the conversation quickly turned to football, and I think that that was really the root of the issue. And I think that Allison is expressing this, and many of the same people that attended that meeting, Allison and Paul Mahoney and the folks on the Conservation Commission, I think they look at Brodie Park South as a preserve and not a park. And I think that, you know, people need to be patient and they need to work within the system, and there's a lot other parts of the system, as I just identified, especially the Board of Finance and especially the P&Z, especially if you're talking about modifying a use or buying new or making improvements, because if we do get into, like I said, a contract situation, any contract situation has to be subject to P&Z approval, because there's no sense buying it if they're not going to approve it. You know, and I agree, you got to do the study thing, but I'm skeptical of that Old Steel Road spike right from the start. It just, in my gut, I just look at it and I'm skeptical. I'm more favorable towards the Antolini. I think that there's a broader use there. The school would get to benefit from it.
Well, the infrastructure's there.
The infrastructure's there, parking's there, and I just think it's not as controversial of a spot. You know, and I see the benefit of it, but we'll go for that. So Allison's letter is here, and we'll attach it to the minutes. I think that Allison, you know, she makes recommendation about a stewardship plan, and she starts talking about cutting trees and changing the mowing practices. We haven't cut a single tree in Brodie Park South. We've trimmed some trees, so it's really erroneous, and we haven't changed the mowing pattern or the cycle. We've waited until after the bobolinks. I think Don Burden took an extra swipe to widen the walking trail that goes through the middle, and if that's what she's drawing attention to, I really think that that's, you know, minuscule, and it doesn't have an impact. And I think that when she reads this and looks at it, she talks about a stewardship task force, which she kind of tries to imply that the Conservation Commission has maintenance powers over the park, which is untrue. I'm going to have to refer to the ordinance that created the Conservation Commission. They're solely advisory. They make recommendations to the Board of Selectmen on how to proceed. They don't have any oversight or implementation ability. It's strictly as an advisory board. I served on that commission for 8 years. So I do need to call Allison and talk with her about it. You know, I think there's a lot of good work done. I think that Paul Mahoney and those guys maintain that trail in the back and do a lot of nice things with the mapping kiosks like they did up at Antolini School and different areas of Jones Mountain. Do a lot of nice work, but I think a lot of the heavy lifting in all the parks. If you have the conversation and you don't include Don Burden, then it's really insulting to his efforts, because he's the guy who carries the water for the parks. He takes out every trash can, he mows every lawn, he cuts every tree, he picks up every bit of debris. You know, some people get together and have volunteer days. Don's doing it 5 days a week, and really does a great job. So I think that you know, as we move forward, I am very cautious about raising expectations that there's a magic solution that automatically is going to be done by next summer, because that is more than likely not the case. It takes a lot of time and a lot of energy and money to make these type of changes happen. And I don't want to raise everybody's, I'd rather lower expectations and come in early than raise expectations and be late. And that really, I think with everything that we've done, all the projects that we've done, you know, we do have a tendency for having projects come in under budget. I expect that there'll be money at the end of the roof project, but you know, it's an old barn, the walls aren't true. He's working on it, but he just started. And if you have a $5,000 window, it wouldn't be the first time in my life I got a call from a carpenter who said, guess what? So I think that the patience aspect of that is done. You guys are more than welcome to read this. It's on file to be attached to the minutes. So,
is there room for a comment
sure.
About the letter?
Mm-hmm.
I think it's great that you say that everybody should respect the process and should, you know, follow what Brodie Park South is doing. Fantastic. Could we also ask you to do the same, so that when recreation has say on what time the field stops being used, they can actually go ahead and enforce that. And when they have the say on whether a pod or anything else is introduced into the park, they're the ones to make that decision rather than be overridden by yourself. I'm just asking and requesting that the same respect be given to the other commissions as you're asking for them to give to each other. Thank you. That's all.
Well, I think that there's been a lot of inconsistency about that, Maria. And if there was a uniform system of rules that worked and everything in a perfect world, that would be fine, but it doesn't work that way. The Rec Commission can't say that it's okay for some people to use parks at night and others not to.
And that's
The Cub Scouts,
exactly what they're saying. No, they're trying to make it uniform all around.
But that's not the implementation, and I pointed this out to the Rec Commission. That said, you know, just in their last flyer, there was night basketball at Brodie Park. When they're trying to enforce something on one group and not enforcing it on the other. Or there's Cub Scouts having campouts at the park 2 and 3 times a year. People going in after dark and using cabins. It's been an uneven system and it needs to be improved. But you need to be fair to people. And sometimes you do have to step in and do what's right. And sometimes rules don't work for every group. So I think in respect to the Rec Commission, when they were asked to use the boat launches after dark, I think they did the right thing, because the boat launches are unsafe. They are old, broken, obsolete, and I feel for the people, and I know that the Rec Commission wants to say yes as many times as they can. They wanted to say yes to the people with the boats, but they did the right thing, because if you ever went down and took a square or a couple pictures of what those moorings look like, it's unsafe. It needs to be redone. Had I understood, being a new first selectman, if I had understood the the 3-year drawdown, or this is the year where they have a significant drawdown, I would have been after the Rec Commission to do a capital project to repair that waterfront, because that waterfront where those boats are moored are unsafe.
Absolutely.
And in that particular instance, not having night access is appropriate.
Sure.
I'm not opposed, excuse me.
Have
please.
you seen the
rocks
that have been painted
Excuse me,
out?
please. May I finish?
Well, Dan, you tend to
May
kind
I
of like
please finish my
overtake
comment, Maria?
a conversation.
And that's right, and I am going to finish my thought. There are areas of town where it's perfectly acceptable to have night access, in my opinion. We have Chapin Park, where you have skating at night, and we even have the Rec Commission's own request. They want to put lights back in Callahan Park, so it appears to me that they are uneven. And if they're going to be uneven, then they need to do their homework and document their work.
Absolutely,
Okay?
and
Because I
would
personally don't
encourage
have a
you,
problem.
and I would encourage you to go out and look at Brodie Park South and see all the rocks sticking out of that that supposed play area that have been painted.
I think you're talking about 1 or 2 rocks.
There are rocks there. There are
And
quite.
we'll get them removed.
Well, you know, in the meantime, if we are all proceeding toward an orderly solution to this, it would be very helpful if those who are concerned about the use that it's been put to were also felt that they were being considered in the equation. And right now, they don't have that feeling at all.
Well-
with the practice going on until 9, and with the stadium lights, and with 75 cars parked.
Practice does not go on until 9 o'clock.
Yes, it does, Dan.
That's
We
not
were
what I've
there-
been
we
told,
were-
and I've
we
been
were
there.
there.
I
We
think
were
there's a lot
there.
of misinformation here.
Well-
Let's just, we don't have to worry about using the park for football until
Next year?
next year, so.
But it's just
But I
this
think that-
idea,
There are some, Jack,
Respect
that I think
around.
when you cross the issue, I think there are some people that don't look at that as a park. They look at it as a preserve.
No, I
Our town is
see that,
growing.
I see that from
And-
the meetings that I've been involved, all
And
about
I
football.
think that, you know, sooner or later, the town will probably address the issue of saying, what Brodie Park South thing is saying is what is the proper disposition? Is there a blend of conservation and active recreation there too? You know? So I think that,
I don't, you know, Dan, I don't disagree with you. You have a huge parcel of land there,
Mhm.
so.
Nearly
you know,
flat.
With, you know, if the consensus, if it was my land and I had the money, I'd probably have a beautiful football field, if that's what I wanted to have. So, but, you know, I'm just the one person. You need, like you say, you need the consensus of everybody. It is a large parcel of land. You know, it is a hot button in town right now, as we all know. Fortunately, we could just do some cross-country skiing there soon and worry about the football later.
cross-country skiing, is that approved?
I think it is. I've been there.
Okay.
I hope it
It's
is.
active recreation, that's good. It's a park. And I think
I've
people
used it
need
for
to
that.
understand it's a park. But I think that, like I said before, I want to echo this, is that trying to raise expectations for a speedy solution takes our town down the wrong path, okay? Rushing and raising expectations that there's a magic the one thing I've learned in my life, the easy magic solutions usually aren't real, and they usually blow up in your face. The doing things the right way, dotting your I's, crossing your T's, is usually what gets the job done right. The job comes in on time, and usually the budget's right too. So I think that we'll proceed, we'll work, just as we said, all through the budget process. We'll get our roof done, we'll work with that, the excess funds, we'll come back and talk to Dan, and we'll see where it goes forward. I've already told you where my gut's on the issue stand. I think that Antoni's probably the sounder bet. But we'll talk about it next meeting.
See what the study says.
That's right. Okay. Any other business to come before the board? We've said none. Entertain a motion. Oh, well, hold on. I got a little motion. I got a little stuff. I just want to go on the record before we move on. It's nice that we have our two new selectmen here. And just take 3 minutes, if we can, to document what you guys have been a part of over the last couple of years. Because I did some pictures, and I know you guys are astutely aware, but I think that when you talk about productivity, $8 million sewer plant, $400,000 sand salt shed off the river, protecting the Farmington. Fixed and done. And steadfastly, when it didn't go perfect, but we hung in on it and we made them toe the line with almost $50,000 in damages paid back to the town. Brown's Corner used to look like this. It's going to be empty and ready for business week of December 6th, if everything goes well. Winchester Road Bridge, done. New road grader. Not flashy, but it works for the people that live on 10 miles of dirt roads in this town. It's fantastic. Roof at Brodie Park. I don't know, 6 miles of paving done. Almost 20 miles of chip seal done. Little landscaping projects and things all throughout town. Arrowhead, in the wake of the storm, we get Arrowhead done. I think it's great. I think this has been a really great board. And the only way that I would describe it, and I think that our new board's great, but I just want to tell you that I refer you to October 26th when I was asked about this board, and the new board coming in, I would say, is that they asked me about my goals and the relation to the old board. I said, you know, my goal for the new board is really to model themselves after the old board, because we have been, I'll quote, we were very productive and worked towards seeking consensus on all issues. We had a really strong board, and it really paid dividends for this town. And I think this board really set the bar high. And I think Jack and Alicia are up to the challenge, and I think we can continue that. But, you know, after a couple of years where things got off track, this board got things back on track, and I think that's great. So it's really a tribute to you guys. It's been great working with you. I think that Alicia and Jack will be great, but you guys have
Good
done
job,
great
man.
service for the community, so thank you very much, I appreciate it. Thanks, Tom, you're great. Bruce, it's been fun, last meeting.
13 more
I hope we don't have an extra one, so with that, you know, I think that you guys certainly deserve a round of applause by our guys. And thank you for service to the community, I appreciate it, it's been fun for me, you guys have always been great. And as this is our last meeting, I'll let you guys do the last motion to get us out of here. We can go celebrate the decision to end this meeting
So moved.
with something refreshing. All in favor?
Sounds good.